A bombshell new report, though, from the New York Times says that President Trump knew about the anonymous whistleblower complaint concerning his dealings with Ukraine when he chose to release frozen military aid to Ukraine in September. That is according to two people familiar with the matter. The report states that lawyers from the White House counsel's office briefed the president about the complaint in late August. That means, it's important, this timeline is important, that means that President Trump knew about the whistleblower complaint at two key moments: when he decided to release $391 million in security assistance to Ukraine, and when he spoke with EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, telling him he didn't want any quid pro quo. This is important. Joining us is the man who broke this story, Julian Barnes, national security reporter for the New York Times. Julian, there's a lot of things in this story that feel like drip, 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 incremental developments that underscore the main one. This isn't one of those things. This is a piece of news that is remarkably important because when the president spoke with his choice, his donor, Ambassador Sondland, on the phone and told him he didn't want quid pro quo, Donald Trump, according to your reporting, knew that he was being scrutinized specifically for the idea that he may have held back this money as a quid pro quo for investigating Joe Biden.
That's right. You put your finger on the most important part of why this really expands our knowledge of the timeline here. We've known that the White House writ large knew about the whistleblower report before it was even made or nearly before it was made. But we didn't know, when did Trump himself know? And why? What explains Trump's sort of change in language? Why did he adopt the sort of legalistic quid pro quo in that September call with Gordon Sondland? So now we know. In late August, two lawyers, the lawyer for the NSC, the top lawyer at the White House counsel's office, go to President Trump and they explain there is a whistleblower's complaint. They're going to try to stop it from going to Congress. They think that the Justice Department might be able to do that. But they put the president on notice that the complaints have been made about his Ukraine policy.
You also note that White House lawyers had briefed the president because they were figuring out if they legally had to give this complaint to Congress. Tell me a bit more about this. Give me some context about this. Would they have not known this otherwise? We know that the Office of Legal Counsel at the Department of Justice didn't think that they didn't think it rose to a level of urgent concern.
This seems like it was years ago now, but it really was only just a few months ago when this issue began with this huge fight between Congress and the intelligence community. What was happening here is that the complaint went to the Inspector General for the intelligence community and then to the DNI. And the DNI went to the White House, and then the White House consulted with Trump. These are the key points of the timeline that we didn't have as fleshed out here. And what we now know is that the White House was going to raise questions about privilege and then was going to talk to the Justice Department. And what we know, the Justice Department, their Office of Legal Counsel, learns about this on August 28th, and on September 3rd issues an opinion that says the DNI should not deliver this whistleblower complaint to Congress. That touches off the crisis that we all saw play out in September.
Let's talk about, in your opinion, and I know that you're not in the business of giving opinions, but I mean this as in terms of a learned guy who's been reporting on these kinds of things. What impact does this new news have on the investigation going forward? Would it have materially been important for the investigation to know before this reporting?
Well, look, the context here is that the impeachment inquiry in the House of Representatives has struggled with this question, as you sort of put it in your opening: what did Trump know and when did he know it? That classic Watergate question. And defenders of the president have said, we don't know what Trump was thinking. We don't know what Trump's intent was here. And any piece of evidence that shows his extent of knowledge and suggests how that influences his actions is important and could influence the impeachment proceedings going on, because this is what investigators have struggled with. The White House has blocked the witnesses who could really testify to this part of the timeline.
So tonight, when this is all digested with you and in the media, and somebody says, Jillian, what's the impact of this development? Why does it really matter that he would have known? What would you tell them?
I would say, look, we've had some big questions about why the president changed his behavior. Why did he change tacks from insisting that Ukraine must investigate the Bidens, must investigate 2016, and at that time deny a White House meeting and freeze the aid? So we now know that he was put on notice that there were complaints that could go to Congress, complaints that could become a scandal. And that's why he changes his tone and tries to de-link the aid and the requests for investigation.
So it makes that particular discussion all the more relevant. When you tell somebody there's no quid pro quo, once you know that they're looking for you for quid pro quo, that becomes relevant. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.